Hello, everybody. Welcome to this courageous conversation on race. I am so happy to have you meet and join me today for this conversation, Sherifa and Rory. I became aware of them because they live in my community, and back in June, planned a Black Lives Matter march in our little community. And unfortunately, it was met with quite a bit of hostility. And that's part of what spurred me on in doing these conversations, as you may know. But I wanted to connect with them and have them share a little bit of their story with all of us, um, to just kind of get a sense of what it means to be kind of on the front line, so to speak, in trying to stand up, trying to speak out and advocate for change, for social justice, and for humanity. So thank you for joining us for this conversation. Please feel free to share any thoughts and comments in the comments below. So welcome, Rory and Sherifa. I'm so happy to have you here. So Sherifa is a sophomore and a psychology major. And Rory is also a sophomore majoring in forensic science and sociology. But I'd like for each of them to introduce themselves a little bit more. So Sherifa, would you like to start, share a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing great today. My name's Sherifa, as she already said, and I'm 19 years old. Again, I attend school in California. I no longer live in Fountain Hills, but I still consider it my second home. Hopefully, after college, I hope to attend some type of graduate school in either social work or law. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Rory, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. So I'm Rory. I'm 20 years old and I attend Grand Canyon University in Phoenix. I've lived in Fountain Hills for about 3.5 years. And like Sherifa, I do plan to attend a graduate school sometime in the future.
Yeah, thank you. And I think both great fields to kind of talk about something like this too. Obviously, both of these fields, both sociology and psychology, and of course social work, are very play a huge role in all of these issues that we're kind of talking about. So, I'd really love for you guys to share. So, as I said, back in June, you planned a march, and there was a lot of hostility. This area is certainly predominantly white. I think in Fountain Hills in particular, it's like 95% white or something like that. So definitely a very white community. A lot of older people in this community as well. There are some younger families, but a lot of older people, a lot of retired people live here. And I wasn't surprised that there were a lot of people that thought, oh, why do we need to do this? And it's not really that big of a deal. Unfortunately, I wasn't really surprised by that. What I was surprised by, a little shocked by, is the level of hostility, the hatred that came through, because it was shared on a Facebook post, a community Facebook post, and just the energy that came through of people just so hateful, so angry and so hostile, like talking about going out there with guns and like just all kinds of stuff. And I was a little shocked by that in this community, that the people who live in this community, that are our neighbors, would have such hatred for some college students trying to let their neighbors know, let each other know that we're all in this together. And I was just, it's making me feel emotional just thinking about it. But I was shocked and so disappointed, so incredibly disappointed. So I would love for you guys to share just kind of a little bit about how kind of all of that unfolded for you, including like how you came together to create it, but also what was going on for you personally. What was it that made you decide that you wanted to do this? So, Sherifa, would you like to begin?
Sure. So around that time, like a month before, I had decided that Fountain Hills, I had looked at Fountain Hills and like with everything going on across the nation, there was a national anger, but for some reason in several states, including Arizona, there was not really much being not really much being televised, or I didn't really see much support in regards to Black Lives Matter. So I actually reached out to Rory. I believe this all started with when I DM'd Rory on Instagram. I said, hey, what's going on in Fountain Hills? Is there anything, like, are there any peaceful marches? Is there anyone coming out in support? And she had told me no. So I asked her, hey, it started just two people. Hey, would you be okay with maybe helping me start a peaceful march and helping me spread the word? And she said, yeah. So from there, two girls evolved into, I believe, 9 in total. And without those 9 girls, I wish they were all here today, but without all 9 of them, the march itself would not have been possible. With their help, we were able to spread the word on Instagram. A lot of people had voiced their support, like younger people. And Peggy, I actually shared the same shock as you, because I knew there would be some, like a couple people saying, oh, I don't know about this. Like, I don't see the necessity for having a march, but I didn't anticipate, like you said, the amount of hate, just the amount of people that were so worked up about a peaceful march. So that actually was very shocking. There was one comment made about one of our organizers that was very shocking as well. So it's just sad to see, very disappointing to see. Again, I feel like even though there's a lot of opposition, those in support outweighed those who were in opposition of the march. And that's what really warmed my heart, because the day of the march, it was just like, I was just in awe to see that so many people in Fountain Hills came together, old, young, kids, like everyone just came out and, just told Fountain Hills, hey, you need to wake up and see that although lives do matter, they cannot matter until Black lives matter, right? It makes sense. It's not really that hard to understand, but yeah, so that's where I was at. So just to like overview, I reached out to Rory, said, hey, is there anything going at Fountain Hills? She told me no. From there, we got 7 other girls. We all came together, organized this march, and were able to spread the word on Instagram and Facebook. Then in June, we had the march, but as you said, we did have to cancel it due to those comments, but thankfully we were able to have a second one.
Yeah. So I know the first one was canceled and then you did do the second one. How much time was between that? I don't remember.
It was about like 2.5 weeks. Yeah.
It was 2.5 weeks. Okay. Okay. So what about you, Rory?
Well, just like Sharifa said, it did start with our little conversation. And then I went ahead and just emailed the mayor just to give them like a heads up of our plan, like, so they didn't think that we were trying to ambush the town or anything with our surprise. And I think we all know how Arizona drivers are, so we just wanted to make sure that traffic control was there, just for the safety of our protesters and also of the drivers themselves. And so the mayor did, like, she was supportive of it, but then, of course, the Facebook comments did come in, and we were becoming more concerned about what might happen, what, like, outside factors might happen that day. And so we did decide to reschedule. And like Sharifa said, there were many of our friends from high school and people that we don't even know that started, like, voicing their support for the march. But then after we rescheduled it, I also had, since my email was kind of already out there, a lot of the older community members started emailing us, like the Democratic part, the Fountain Hills Democratic Club, sorry, and Liberal Ladies and a few other people, just individuals in our community, and they started reaching out to us, asking how could they help, what they could do, what we needed. And so it kind of just like brought everyone together in a way that none of us would have expected. I definitely did not expect it. Like Sharifa said, the day of the march, we had like close to 300 people. I certainly did not expect that many people, especially with COVID-19 going on. It was amazing, but it was also like, it was horrible that we had to march and why we had to postpone it, but it definitely did bring our community together a lot more, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. And if I remember correctly, at some point there was some sort of, I don't know if this was in the local paper or what, but I remember at some point, if I'm remembering correctly, there was something that um, went around for residents to sign, something related to, it was about like students or people that had gone to school in Fountain Hills or something like that, and then it expanded beyond to just people that were here that maybe didn't go to school here. That was part of your, not necessarily that you created it, but that ended up being something about supporting what you were doing, right?
Right. So there's like I don't remember what year specifically, but it was Fountain Hills High School alumni that came together. I think like 5 or 10 years older than Sharifa and I. And they came together, they wrote a letter, and they were just kind of voicing like their disgust, I guess, of the hatred that we received, and just
Yeah.
supporters that, our supporters were receiving, just because we wanted to have a peaceful march, which we did say on our flyers each time it was peaceful. In each email I wrote, I said it was peaceful. So I don't know how that got lost in translation, but here we are. But that letter, it got over 500 signatures from people in Fountain Hills, from people outside of Fountain Hills, and they did write it to the mayor and the town council, I believe, or something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing that, and I did sign it. I didn't go to school here. I moved here not all that long ago, a couple of years ago, but I did sign that as well. At first, I didn't because it was for alumni, but then when they opened it up to other people, that was something that I signed, and it was really so. As obviously, I'm older, but I was so inspired, and I've already shared this with you, but I'm sharing with all of them. But I was really so inspired to see younger people coming out and not just deciding to do it. I mean, that's great, but to have the reaction that you did and then come back and say, no, you're not going to dictate what we're going to do. We're going to do this. And, and I don't know what you were exactly thinking, but ultimately that's what you did. And to do that. And I think because of some of the controversy and the problems that were arising, I think you did garner even more support than likely would have happened just if you had done it the original date and not everything happened, because I think there was support from outside the community as well, because I believe that it actually made the Phoenix, like it became more aware in the Phoenix area as well. So like the whole community of the Phoenix general area started sending support as well, I believe, or at least on Facebook. I don't know if it was necessarily directly sent to you, but there was other support there too. And part of the reason that I wanted to have you guys talk about this is really being able to recognize how that can happen, that you can have a desire to do something, and in lots of different ways, it can be shot down. Sometimes in really significant, scary ways, like you guys experienced, and sometimes in just like, well, that's not a good idea. Why do you need to do that or whatever? But no matter what other people think, that there's a purpose. There's a need, because if people are fighting it, there's even more of a need, right? The fact that you receive that kind of reaction proves how important it is to have those conversations, how important it is to raise the awareness that is happening in this, or the lack of awareness in this community in particular. And of course, that again happened all over the country, but it really does show how significantly important raising voices, raising awareness really is to bring to people that really don't have an understanding. Because there were a lot of people, I think, that were opposed to the idea of it, but not necessarily from a hateful place. Like they weren't expressing themselves in a hateful way, but just kind of like, oh, there's no racial issues here in Fountain Hills. Well, maybe not, but there's like 5 people of color in Fountain Hills. It's a very limited number of people, unfortunately. So it's easy to think it doesn't exist here or it's not a problem here. But in reality, it exists everywhere, and it does exist right here. Absolutely. So maybe this wasn't something that you personally experienced, but was there a moment when you learned of all of the hateful kinds of things that were coming out, the threats of physical violence that were coming out? Were there moments when you felt scared? Were there moments when you thought, oh, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't do this? And in particular for you, Sharifa, given obviously your color, was there a little bit more, like, was there concern? Was there a fear or an idea that maybe we should back down a little bit?
Yeah, most definitely. I would actually be lying if I said I wasn't scared at some point. I know my family in Arizona or Fountain Hills, they had told me, I'm not sure if you should move forward with this. Maybe you should allow your peers to go ahead and carry this out and you stay behind because you're Black. But I actually hesitated. I was in between. I was like, so what are my options here and which one means more to me? So at the end, obviously, I ended up going, but I definitely was, and Gina as well, because we did have another Black girl in our organization. Her name was Gina. And both of us, oh wait, I'm sorry, three Black girls in the organization. So we had Cheyenne, me, and Gina. So us three, I feel like the comments, I feel like we were, not that anyone else in the organization was not scared, but we were more in a position of vulnerability because of our color. So
Absolutely.
yes, I was definitely scared at some point, but thankfully we were able to carry it out and I was able to go and attend and do what I needed to do. So
I'm
Yeah.
just gonna jump in really quick. There's actually 4 Black women in our group,
my
including
goodness,
Carrie.
Carrie,
Totally okay.
I'm so sorry.
Well, I think Sharifa, you're a little bit removed being in California, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Completely okay.
Um, so Roy, what about you? What about you? Like, how did it impact you personally as all that was going on?
Yeah, so for me, at the time in our group, I only really knew Sharifa and like 2 other people. So for me, it was more, is my friend going to be okay?
Mhm.
Or because I do have other friends that are Black that wanted to attend the march. I'm like, are they going to be okay? And like just that short little time that we had between deciding if we actually wanted to reschedule the march, it was kind of fearful of having all those comments about like we're going to bring all of our guns and stuff.
Mhm.
What's going to happen if my friends do come? Like I can try to protect them, but I don't know how helpful I'm going to be just being me. So
Mhm. Yeah. And I know that you talked already about that there ended up being a lot of support, people reaching out to you and stuff like that. Do you think without that support, like what do you think would have happened had you not had that influx of a lot of support from people that you didn't even know? What do you imagine would have happened?
I think there would have been a lot more aggression. I'm glad that people were able to voice their support, and I'm glad people were in support. But just say it was just our little group and maybe a couple other people our age. One, it wouldn't have had the impact that it did have, and two, I feel like we would have definitely been more exposed, or like people would have been able to be a lot more aggressive than they were, I feel like. But that's just my opinion. I'm not sure.
Mhm. Do you think that you would have felt empowered to go ahead and continue and do the actual march? Or do you think that you would have kind of decided that it wasn't something that seemed to make sense in terms of support and safety?
In all honesty, we weren't expecting that amount of people. So we were actually expecting like a very small, maybe like, I don't know, Roy, what do you think? Like 50, maybe even less.
yeah,
So we
around
were, right. So we were still going to move forward with it nevertheless. But the fact that it was as big as it was, um, resonated with me because I'm like, okay, maybe this is something that, and that's why we actually decided to branch off and do other things like our food bank delivery service. Maybe this is something we need to use. Maybe we need to use this platform to do so and so and so. So, yeah.
So then you canceled for the reasons that we've talked about. So before even receiving a lot of support via email or whatever, had you already made the decision that regardless you were still going to go ahead and reschedule, or was it after receiving the support from everybody that you decided to reschedule? Rory, do you want
I
to
think,
talk?
oh, sorry. Yeah, so we definitely did receive some support before we made the decision, but we made that decision within like 6 hours of canceling and rescheduling. Right after we decided to do it, we just like jumped on board. When is the next date? What are we going to do? How are we going to plan? And we just like made all of these plans. And so like definitely us canceling our March did kind of give us more time and more time to organize and just plan exactly what we want to do, what we need, the outside factors like water and something we didn't think about before.
Yeah.
But yeah. Sorry, I lost where I was going with that.
Well, you answered the question. Did you have something you wanted to add, Sherifa?
No, I was gonna say everything Rory said was right. It was basically a blessing in disguise because even though we had to cancel it, like Rory said, we had all that time to be able to get what we needed and garner more support. So
yeah. I like thinking just about advocacy and thinking about people going out there and deciding to do something that matters to them. Like to hear you say that you canceled, obviously with everything that you were receiving, but that so quickly you decided, no, okay, we've canceled for now, but we're still doing this. We are moving ahead and we are going to do this no matter what. I think is such an important lesson for everybody, like no matter what it is that they want to do, and they're afraid maybe other people aren't supporting them, maybe even people are saying no, you can't do that and being hateful about it, but to have that kind of thing, because I was afraid for you guys, like I was afraid for our community, like I could imagine gunfire erupting and innocent people aside from the march, like just random people being shot as well, like because I've seen enough of the things that people post around here. Like I was terrified for you guys. And then to know that it was not only rescheduled, but that you made that decision so quickly, given what you were facing, is something that I think certainly something to be proud of for yourself, but also something to really recognize that you may not have support for the thing that matters to you, but it doesn't mean it doesn't matter. That when something matters to you, when something matters to our communities, that whether anybody supports you or not, even if there are people out there who hate what you're doing, that it matters. And that things will only change. Like you said, doing that march did change something in our community. Yes, those people are still going to hate, but it brought the other people in our community together. It brought an awareness that didn't exist before that. And it was, if I remember correctly, and I could have this wrong, and I don't know if you'll know who I'm speaking of, but I think that you will. I think it was after all of that happened, maybe even before the march actually did occur, that there was a gentleman, and I can't remember his name, but he ended up going out, and maybe it was just after George Floyd died, I don't remember, but he ended up going out around the fountain. Fountain Hills is Fountain Hills for a reason, so we have a fountain, a community park. He ended up going out with a sign. Do you know who I'm referring to? Like
I do, yeah. I don't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about because he contacted us at one point.
Yeah.
So.
And so, and again, I don't know if it was a result of everything that ended up happening with the problems that occurred, but you know, this gentleman was going out every morning with a sign of something of kindness and community, or I don't remember exactly. It was different. He would change it, but walking around up and down the street, the main street there, with his sign. And so, doing something when something matters to you, being able to go out there and do that, even when there are people who think it doesn't matter, when there are people who are telling you you're wrong, and when there are people who try to shut you down with their hatred, it matters. It matters not just in that small moment, but it reverberates out. And I would love for you to share exactly how it ended up reverberating out for you guys and the people who ended up coming together, the 9 of you or however many that was, into Together We Care. So whoever might like to share a little bit about that. I don't know if one of you had a little bit more of a role in that, but you ended up developing Together We Care. So share a little bit about how that ended up coming out of this and what Together We Care is.
Rory, do you want to go ahead or can I?
Oh, yeah, sure. I wasn't sure. So Together We Care, so, just with the cancellation, obviously, we kind of, like we said multiple times before, we just kind of jumped onto it. But we also wanted to establish who we were as a group. And, especially in June, and there's still now a lot of misinformation just, floating around the internet. And so many people thought, even though we had said that it was a peaceful march, they all thought that we were going to destroy the statues or something, break windows, do something that they heard on the news or they saw on it. And, we just wanted to create a basis of who we were, the difference of us or our group between, all the looters or rioters that were actually starting fires. We have a different reason, and that's kind of how we kind of started the group itself.
So you wanted to kind of create an actual kind of container for what it is that you guys came together for.
Yeah.
Okay, then Together We Care, and I love that name. Rory, do you want to share a little bit more kind of then what ended up evolving from that?
Sure. So, just kind of like the support did kind of come in on through all different points, social media, Instagram, Facebook for some of our organizers, and then email, obviously. And so finding out, we had 2 different groups. There weren't so many people in the middle that we knew of, in age-wise, that really had much support for us, that we knew of, just because social media only has so many people. But Instagram was kind of more of our younger platform, and then Facebook we kind of use just for our older individuals who go on there. So that's why we have 2 different platforms, and just posting and keeping in touch with them as much as we can throughout June and also up until now. It's just been able to continue the conversation. I mean, obviously there were that many supporters before we had the march, but I guess our actually having the march definitely opened up our community, saying there's other people that actually do care.
Right.
And so, as a group, whether it's just 9 of us or a few hundred, we do care. And that's kind of the whole Together We Care part.
Yeah, I love that. Sherifa, do you want to share a little bit about kind of then how that has continued to evolve and how it's like expanded into some of these other things? A little bit earlier, you mentioned very briefly, you just said food bank, but I know that there's a couple of other pieces to that as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. So just as Roy was stating, our organization stresses community. So that's actually one of the reasons why we decided to go with Together We Care, because we want to stress that we are considering everyone. We're considering minorities, we're considering, white people, we're considering every person from any dimension of their life we want them to be in support and just be able to educate themselves through our organization. So not only is education a goal for our organization, but we decided to do a food bank delivery service so we can actually give back to the community. So it's based here in California because I'm in California, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to help the following communities: Long Beach, Inglewood, and Compton. but it can also be any other, like anyone who needs it. Just like we want them to be able to reach out to us and say, hey, I'm in need of a package. Can I enroll in your service? So that's basically what it is. We bring the food to their door. So instead of them having to drive to a food bank, we would deliver that food package to them. So that's what differentiates us from a food bank and just any normal, communal thing. So apart from that, we did have a vigil for Elijah and George and just every other black every other black life that has been lost to just persecution, and even minorities, not even just black people. We wanted to stress that too, that this organization is not only to fight for persecuted black lives, but to fight for every life that's being persecuted unjustly. So there's also that. So we had the vigil. What else did we have? We had the podcast. Yeah, so we have a podcast called Together We Care Talks. If you guys would like to check that out, it's called Together We Care Talks on Spotify. It's available there. So far, we have 6 episodes, and through those 6 episodes, I'm sure you will be able to learn something new with each episode. They're about 12 minutes long, so not too long. You won't get bored. Then we also have a newsletter that you can enroll in. So with this newsletter, again, one of our primary goals with this organization is to educate those who are not, like you said, because people in Fountain Hills, I don't think, because there was a good portion of people in Fountain Hills that weren't exactly against, like you said, Black Lives Matter, but just didn't know. Because the narrative that was being spread in the news was that protesters equaled destruction, danger, and all of that stuff. So again, like Rory said, we wanted to differentiate. We wanted to set ourselves apart from that. So yeah, so again, what we've created a podcast, we've created a newsletter, we've created a food bank delivery service that brings the food to their door. And yeah, we're hoping to make this, hopefully by next year, make it an actual nonprofit, but praying that happens. So
yeah, that takes a little time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to just, I want to do a nonprofit. Let me do that. Yeah, there's a lot that you have to do. So how do you get the money to buy the food to deliver?
Right, so that's why the platform that we've been able to get is like so crucial and so just amazing, because without our supporters, they actually helped us, or their donations allowed us to get the produce for our first delivery. So without their donations, without their support, we literally would not have been able to move forward with this service. But again, most people would be like, okay, so how are you going to sustain it? How is it going to continue on for hopefully, who knows? So we're hoping to, I don't want to bore you, but we're hoping to release a clothing, like merch, but not really merch, but people have voiced that they would be interested in buying clothing. So we're working.
You mean like Together We Care branded stuff?
Right. So,
yeah.
And it would be something they would actually wear, not something you just have in your closet and never wear. So hopefully the design we create is something flattering. So on top of that, I have reached out to local restaurants. So you're able to collaborate with restaurants, and you get a percentage of, how it works, like say
10% of sales or proceeds.
Right. Exactly. Wow. So hopefully that works out, but again, it's a work in progress. Just praying that it all comes together. So
yeah, absolutely. And I will share links in the description of this video for people to be able to find your website and reach out, learn more, and all of that. So I will share those links with everybody as well. And so I've been a social worker for a long time, but I have to say that hearing you talk about this, hearing you both talk about how all of this has how it came up and how it's progressed, is so inspiring to me. Like, to me, I'm not going to go out there and probably create anything like that because I already have my own work, but it really is so incredibly inspiring. And I think for people listening, no matter what it is that you've had a desire to do, particularly when something really feels important to you, that what you initially envision may not be what happens, but things evolve. And what you end up creating may look quite different than what you originally anticipated. And maybe it's bigger, maybe it's smaller, maybe it's more specific, maybe it even veers a little bit into doing something a little different than what you originally imagined. Maybe it's for the community, maybe it's more for yourself and a few people. But whatever it is, when you have something that you feel passionate about, when you have support, which means you have to put yourself out there to get that support. Whoops. Sorry about that. But when you have support, it's amazing what is possible. It's amazing what is possible. When you don't let haters keep you from doing that thing that you want to do, what you can do is limitless. And I am just so inspired by you both, and the rest of your team. I know that there are other people who are not joining us right now, but really all of it, from the march, the original march, to potentially creating a nonprofit to help people in lots of different ways. So I hope that those of you watching feel inspired, whether it's to learn a little bit more about the issues that people of color are facing, particularly Black people, but people that are suffering from injustice also in the world, whether you're inspired to learn more about that, or maybe even inspired to start your own little company or nonprofit. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Before I actually sign off, is there anything that either one of you would like to leave the people watching? Is there anything that you'd like to share? Anything you'd like to say to maybe inspire them to do something, or just anything that's on your mind?
Just to add on to what you said, if you're trying to pursue a personal endeavor, please, because I'm sure Rory and I have, well, we have come face to face with doubt. But if you're trying to pursue something and you want it with your heart and soul, please, please, please do not allow anyone to tell you not to do so, or them to tell you that it's just not going to work out. Because if you truly, truly want it, then you'll achieve it. You'll get it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Roy, do you have any parting words?
For sure, yeah. It is always nice to have at least one friend with you, whether it's an actual family member or friend, or someone that you just meet from a bunch of other people and then you become friends. It's so nice to have someone with a like mind and a like goal, like Sherifa said, that you want to reach, and just keep going. Don't let other factors, don't let them upset you too much. Don't let them distraught you. Just keep going. What you want, you will get done.
Yeah. And I love that about having a person. Like, yes, it's great to have a lot of people, but having a person who you know gets it, who you know you're kind of in this together, even if you don't form a company together, but you're kind of just in it in terms of where your heart is. Makes a huge difference. And connection is something that I talk about all the time. It is the crux of so much of healing. And having that one person that you can share those passions and those fears with makes a huge difference. So thank you for watching. Thank you both, Sherifa and Rory, for joining me for this courageous conversation. And I am so grateful to have been able to meet you, and am so looking forward to see what you end up achieving with Together We Care. Thank you, everybody, for watching.